My name is Clifford. I'm 32 years old, and I've built my career as a software engineer in Boston through hard work and determination, despite coming from a wealthy family. I've always believed that earning your own way makes success sweeter. That philosophy was put to the ultimate test when my teenage sister Amanda texted me, "Send me $3,000 for prom." My response? Earn it yourself. Little did I know those 3 words would trigger a family earthquake that would force me to choose between my principles and my place in the family. Before I tell you how this family drama unfolded, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to deal with entitled relatives. I grew up in Highland Park, an affluent suburb north of Chicago, in a 5-bedroom colonial with manicured lawns and a 3-car garage. My parents, Robert and Diana, built a successful chain of high-end furniture stores across the Midwest. Their business acumen was matched only by their spending habits. Luxury cars, designer clothes, and lavish vacations were the norm in our household. Money was never discussed as something scarce, but rather as something that naturally flowed when you were successful like my parents. From a young age, I noticed how differently my sister Amanda and I approached our privileged life. Amanda, now 18, embraced the lifestyle wholeheartedly. As the baby of the family, she was pampered beyond reason. When she was 6, she wanted ballet lessons, so my parents hired a former principal dancer from the Chicago Ballet to give her private instruction. When she was 12, she mentioned liking a certain pop star, and my father somehow managed to get backstage passes and a private meet and greet. Her 16th birthday featured a party that cost more than some weddings, complete with a temporary dance floor installed in our backyard, and a performance by a well-known DJ. I was different. Even as a kid, I felt uncomfortable when things were simply handed to me. I remember when I was 10, I wanted a new bike. Instead of just asking for it, I negotiated with my father to earn it by doing chores around the house for a month. The pride I felt riding that bike was incomparable, because I knew I had earned it, even in my childish way. This pattern continued throughout my adolescence. While Amanda expected and received designer clothes without question, I got a job at 16 working at a local bookstore, using my earnings to buy my own clothes and save for college. My parents found this behavior baffling and sometimes even insulting. "Why are you working at that store for minimum wage when we can give you an allowance triple that amount?" my mother would ask, genuinely confused. "Because it feels good to earn it myself," I would respond, which would usually lead to an eye roll or a dismissive wave. When college came around, my parents fully expected to pay for everything. They had set up generous trust funds for both Amanda and me years earlier. I surprised them by applying for scholarships and taking out modest student loans for my education at MIT. I also worked part-time in the campus computer lab to cover my personal expenses. "This is completely unnecessary," my father declared during a heated phone call my sophomore year. "You're making things needlessly difficult for yourself. That trust fund is your money." "I appreciate the trust fund, Dad, but I want to do this my way," I insisted. These conversations became a regular feature of our relationship. While my classmates at MIT stressed about student debt, I knew I had a financial safety net that I chose not to use. Some might call that privileged stubbornness, and perhaps there's some truth to that. But for me, it was about establishing my identity separate from my family's wealth. After graduating with honors in computer science, I received multiple job offers from prestigious tech companies. My parents expected me to take the highest-paying position at a major firm in Chicago, which would have allowed me to remain close to home. Instead, I chose a promising startup in Boston, far enough from my family's sphere of influence to build my own life. The move to Boston marked a definitive shift in our family dynamics. While I came home for major holidays, I established a modest but comfortable life for myself. I rented a nice 1-bedroom apartment in Cambridge, drove a practical mid-range sedan, and lived well below my means despite my generous tech salary. I saved aggressively and invested wisely, slowly building my own wealth through work rather than inheritance. My lifestyle choices became a constant source of friction during family gatherings. My mother couldn't understand why I wouldn't buy a luxury condo when I could easily afford it with family money. My father thought my reliable Honda was beneath someone of our status. Amanda, observing all this, simply concluded I was weird and unnecessarily difficult. Our weekly family video calls increasingly turned into interventions about my financial independence phase, as they called it. They viewed my determination to make my own way as some sort of rebellion or psychological issue, rather than a legitimate life choice. "When are you going to grow out of this, Clifford?" my father asked, during one particularly tense call last Thanksgiving. "You're acting like we did something wrong by providing for you." "It's not about what you did wrong, Dad," I tried to explain. "It's about what I need to do right for myself." These conversations never ended satisfactorily. My parents could not comprehend why anyone would choose to earn something when it could simply be given to them. Meanwhile, my relationship with Amanda grew increasingly strained. When she was younger, we had been close. I taught her how to ride a bike, helped her with homework, and was her confidant when she had friend troubles at school. But as she entered her teenage years, the gulf between our values widened. She embraced the entitled attitude my parents fostered, while I pushed against it. Our conversations became superficial, limited to holiday gatherings and occasional text messages about family logistics. The last time I visited home, 3 months ago, I noticed how Amanda now treated the household staff with casual disregard, barely acknowledging their presence as they served meals or cleaned up after her. When I suggested she thank our longtime housekeeper Maria for preparing a special dessert she liked, Amanda looked at me like I'd suggested she thank the dishwasher for washing dishes. "That's literally her job, Cliff," she said with teenage exasperation. "Do you thank your computer every time it boots up?" That moment crystallized my concern for how my sister was being raised. It wasn't entirely her fault. My parents had created an environment where everything came easily, and nothing required effort or gratitude. I worried about how she would function in the real world when she inevitably encountered situations where her family name and wealth couldn't immediately solve her problems. Little did I know that a simple text message would soon force all these simmering tensions to the surface, requiring me to take a stand that would threaten my very place in the family. It was a Thursday evening in April, and I was working late on a critical software update for one of our biggest clients. Spring in Boston had finally arrived, bringing with it the familiar energy of a city emerging from winter. My apartment windows were open for the first time in months, letting in a gentle breeze carrying the sounds of the city. My phone buzzed with a text message, briefly distracting me from the lines of code on my screen. I expected it to be from one of my colleagues also working late, or perhaps my friend James asking about our weekend hiking plans. Instead, I saw a message from Amanda, which was unusual on a weeknight. "Hey bro, need $3,000 for prom. Sending you my Venmo." I stared at the screen, momentarily wondering if she was joking. A second later, the Venmo notification appeared. She wasn't kidding. $3,000 for prom. No explanation, no pleas, not even a question mark to indicate she was making a request rather than a demand. Just a statement of need followed by an expectation of compliance. My mind flashed back to my own senior prom 12 years earlier. I had worked extra shifts at the bookstore to afford a simple tuxedo rental, corsage, and my share of a modest limo split with friends. The entire experience had cost me less than $400, and I remembered feeling proud that I had paid for it entirely with my own earnings. What could possibly cost $3,000 for a high school dance? I did a quick mental calculation. Even the most extravagant designer dress might run $1,000. Add in professional hair and makeup, shoes and accessories, and you might reach $1,500. Even with a private limousine and an expensive dinner, the total should fall well below $3,000. Something didn't add up. I took a deep breath and typed a measured response. "Amanda, that's a lot of money. What exactly is it for?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Dress is $1,200, shoes $400, hair and makeup $350, limo $500, dinner at Le Ciel $300, plus I need to rent jewelry and have some extra for after-party stuff." I read through her itemized list with growing disbelief. Le Ciel was one of Chicago's most expensive restaurants, the kind of place where business tycoons closed multi-million-dollar deals over $80 steaks. And after-party stuff was suspiciously vague. "Can't Mom and Dad help with this?" I asked. though I already knew the answer. "They're already paying for half," she replied. "I need to cover the rest. They said I should ask you since you have a real job now." That stung. My parents knew very well that I had worked hard for my financial independence. For them to suggest I should simply hand over thousands of dollars to my sister for a one-night high school event felt like a deliberate undermining of the values I had been trying to establish. "Amanda," I typed carefully, "when I was your age, I worked at the bookstore to pay for my own prom expenses. It made the night more meaningful knowing I had earned it." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again before her response came through. "Oh my God, Cliff. Nobody cares about your bootstrap story. This is different. It's senior prom, and everyone in my friend group is going all out." I felt my jaw tighten. This wasn't about the money itself. I could afford $3,000. It was about the principle, about the lessons being taught and learned. My sister was about to enter adulthood with no concept of financial responsibility or the relationship between effort and reward. "What if I helped you find a part-time job?" I suggested. "You could earn the money yourself in a few weeks. I'd be happy to help with your resume." Her response was immediate and cutting. "Are you serious right now? Prom is in 3 weeks. I don't have time for some minimum wage job. Just send the money." The conversation was deteriorating quickly. I decided to be direct. "Amanda, I think $3,000 is excessive for prom, and I don't feel comfortable just sending that kind of money without any effort on your part." "Wow," she texted back. "I thought you were the cool one in the family. Guess you're just cheap. Whatever." I sat back from my computer, the code on my screen now completely forgotten. This interaction encapsulated everything that concerned me about my sister's development. In her world, money appeared magically upon request, and any resistance was met with insults and emotional manipulation. After several minutes of internal debate, I made my decision and sent a final message. "Earn it yourself. It would mean more that way." Then silence. No response, no angry emoji, nothing. Just digital quiet that somehow seemed louder than any argument. I turned my phone face down and tried to refocus on my work, though my concentration was shot. Part of me felt guilty for denying her request, wondering if I was being unnecessarily rigid. The larger part, however, felt certain I had made the right call. Someone needed to introduce my sister to the concept that money and the things it buys have more value when earned. After an hour of distracted coding, I checked my phone again. Still no response from Amanda. I assumed she had moved on to other potential sources of funds, perhaps friends or our extended family members, who might be more susceptible to her requests. I felt a brief wave of relief thinking the matter had been dropped, at least as far as I was concerned. Little did I know that my simple 3-word response, "Earn it yourself," had lit a fuse that was about to explode with family-wide repercussions. Approximately 30 minutes later, my phone rang. My mother's face appeared on the screen, and immediately my stomach tightened. Calls from my mother on weeknights were rare unless something was wrong. Given the timing, I had little doubt about the subject matter. "Hello, Mom," I answered, keeping my tone neutral. "Clifford," she began, her voice carrying that particular blend of disappointment and controlled anger I'd known since childhood. "I cannot believe how cruelly you've treated your sister." I took a deep breath. "I assume Amanda told you about her request for prom money?" $3,000 is nothing to you," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "You make a 6-figure salary at that tech company, and you still have your trust fund sitting untouched. Why would you refuse to help your own sister with something so important to her?" "Mom, it's not about whether I can afford it," I tried to explain. "It's about, your father wants to speak with you," she interrupted, and I heard the sound of the phone being passed. This was unusual. Typically, I dealt with my mother on family matters. My father tended to stay removed from emotional issues unless they intersected with business or finances. For him to get involved signaled that this had been elevated to a serious family matter. "Clifford," my father's deep voice resonated through the phone. The background noise suggested I was on speakerphone, with both parents listening. "Your behavior is disappointing. Family supports family. That's the foundation everything else is built on. Dad, I agree that family is important, I said, trying to maintain composure, but I don't think handing Amanda $3,000 for an excessive prom experience is actually supporting her. It's enabling behavior that— Don't lecture us about parenting, my mother cut in. Amanda is devastated. She's in her room crying because her own brother thinks she doesn't deserve a special prom night. That's not what I said at all, I protested. I suggested she could earn the money herself, which would make the experience more meaningful. I even offered to help her find a part-time job. She's a full-time student with extracurricular activities, my father countered. She doesn't have time for some minimum wage job just because you've developed these strange ideas about money. I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar frustration rise within me. We had been having variations of this conversation for years, and they never seemed to hear what I was actually saying. This isn't about strange ideas, I said firmly. It's about values. Working for something gives it value. Amanda needs to learn that money represents time and effort, not just numbers in an account. Your sister doesn't need financial literacy lessons from you, my mother snapped. She needs your support. $3,000 means nothing in your financial situation. This isn't about the amount, I insisted. It's about the principle. And frankly, I'm concerned about what Amanda is planning that costs so much. Has she broken down the expenses for you? There was a brief silence, which told me they hadn't actually asked for details. We trust Amanda to make appropriate decisions, my father finally said, sidestepping the question. She's always been responsible. I nearly laughed at that characterization but managed to hold it back. Has she mentioned what the after-party stuff is that she needs extra money for? Young people deserve to celebrate milestones, my mother said defensively. Prom is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The conversation continued in this circular pattern for several minutes. Each time I tried to explain my perspective about teaching Amanda financial responsibility and the value of earning rewards, they deflected with emotional appeals or dismissals of my concerns as irrelevant or misguided. Finally, my mother's voice took on a tone I'd never heard directed at me before, cold and ultimatum-like. Family means supporting each other, Clifford. If you can't do that, maybe you're not part of this family. The words hit me like a physical blow. Had my own mother just suggested I wasn't part of the family over $3,000 for a prom? Before I could respond, my father added, Your mother's right. The Anderson family takes care of its own. If you're too selfish to understand that, perhaps you need to reconsider your position in this family. The call ended shortly after that, with neither resolution nor reconciliation. I sat in my apartment, the partially completed code still glowing on my screen, feeling as though I'd entered some alternate reality where refusing to fund a teenager's extravagant party was grounds for family excommunication. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my father, sent to both Amanda and me. Clifford, after discussing with your mother, we are giving you until midnight to transfer the requested $3,000 to your sister. Failure to do so will be taken as your decision to remove yourself from this family and all the responsibilities and benefits that entails. This is not a discussion. I stared at the message in disbelief. Was I being disowned over prom money? The threat was as absurd as it was painful. What did remove yourself from this family even mean in practical terms? Would they stop speaking to me? Remove me from the will? Cancel holiday invitations? More importantly, what would giving in to this demand teach Amanda? That emotional manipulation and parental intervention were effective tools to get what she wanted. That money could and should be demanded rather than earned? I set my phone down without responding. This situation needed careful thought, not an emotional reaction. Whatever I decided would likely set a precedent for future family interactions. If I gave in now, where would the line be drawn next time? My work forgotten, I paced around my apartment, trying to process what had just happened. My family was essentially holding our relationship hostage over my refusal to fund my sister's extravagant prom plans. The situation seemed simultaneously trivial and monumental. $3,000 was objectively not worth family estrangement, but the principle at stake felt too important to abandon. As the evening wore on, I found myself unable to focus on anything productive. I ordered takeout that I barely touched, attempted to distract myself with television that I didn't watch, and checked my phone periodically, though no new messages arrived. By 11 p.m., an hour before my father's arbitrary deadline, I still hadn't decided how to respond. Part of me wanted to transfer the money just to end the conflict, but a stronger part resisted capitulating to what felt like emotional blackmail. If I gave in now, what would the next demand be? And what lesson would Amanda learn about how to treat people and handle money? I finally went to bed without sending any response or money, though sleep eluded me as I stared at the ceiling, replaying the conversations and wondering how a simple earn it yourself had escalated to threats of family excommunication. Dawn broke through my bedroom blinds after a mostly sleepless night. As the morning light gradually filled my room, clarity began to emerge from the emotional fog of the previous evening. This conflict wasn't really about $3,000 for prom. It was about a pattern of family dynamics that had been building for years, possibly decades. I sat up in bed and reached for my phone, half expecting to find messages declaring my official removal from the family. Instead, there was nothing, no texts, no missed calls, no emails. The deadline had passed without acknowledgement. The silence gave me space to think more clearly. Instead of reacting emotionally, I decided to approach this situation analytically, as I would a complex coding problem. First, I needed more information. My younger cousin Brian had always been straight with me. At 22, he was closer to Amanda's age, and often knew the unfiltered version of family events. I called him, hoping he might have some insight. "Hey, Cliff," he answered cheerfully. "What's up? It's early. Sorry about the time," I apologized. "Quick question, has Amanda mentioned anything to you about her prom plans?" Brian was quiet for a moment before responding cautiously. "Why do you ask?" "I'm trying to get the full picture," I explained. "She asked me for $3,000, and I'm trying to understand what she's actually planning." Brian sighed. "Look, I'm not trying to start drama, but since you're asking, she and her friends rented a suite at the Lakeshore Hotel for after prom. They're planning a pretty massive party with alcohol and everything. The $3,000 includes her covering a portion of that suite and the alcohol they're buying through some college guy." My suspicions confirmed. I thanked Brian for his honesty and ended the call. This explained the vague after-party stuff line item and the inflated budget. Amanda wasn't just funding a dress and limo. She was bankrolling an illegal party with alcohol for minors. This new information changed the equation significantly. Not only was I being asked to fund something excessive, but I was also being manipulated into supporting something potentially dangerous and definitely illegal. With renewed determination, I decided to dig deeper. If Amanda had asked me for money, who else had she approached? I called my Aunt Samantha, who had always been perceptive about family dynamics. "Cliff, how lovely to hear from you," she answered warmly. "What brings you to call on a Friday morning?" After some pleasantries, I broached the subject carefully. "Aunt Sam, has Amanda reached out to you recently about prom funding?" "Oh," her tone shifted slightly. "Yes, she asked me for $500 last week for prom expenses. I sent it to her, though it seemed like quite a lot." "Did she mention what the money was specifically for?" "Just general prom expenses." "Why? Is something wrong?" I explained the situation briefly, including what I'd learned from Brian about the hotel suite and alcohol. "I see," Aunt Samantha said slowly. "You know, now that you mention it, this isn't the first time Amanda has approached family members for substantial amounts of money. Last Christmas, she asked your Uncle Greg for $800 for a school trip that your parents later mentioned they had already paid for. This revelation led me down a rabbit hole of investigation. Over the next few hours, I spoke with several family members, each with similar stories. Amanda had developed a pattern of approaching different relatives with various stories about needing money, often for duplicative expenses or exaggerated costs. Most troubling was the discovery that my parents were almost certainly aware of this behavior. In several instances, relatives had mentioned Amanda's requests to them directly, yet they had taken no action to address it. By midday, I had compiled a disturbing picture. My sister was systematically manipulating family members for cash. My parents were enabling this behavior, and now they were threatening to cut me off for refusing to participate in what amounted to a family-wide deception. I took a break from my investigation to research healthy family dynamics and boundary setting. Article after article confirmed what I had intuitively felt. Enabling entitled behavior in young adults does them no favors, and families that use money or emotional manipulation as control mechanisms create lasting psychological damage. Around 2 p.m., I called my friend Thomas, who had gone through a similar family estrangement years earlier over his parents' controlling behavior. The hardest part, Thomas told me after I explained my situation, is recognizing that sometimes the healthiest thing for everyone is to establish firm boundaries, even if it causes short-term pain. Your sister isn't learning responsibility, and your parents aren't helping her by shielding her from consequences. His words resonated deeply. This wasn't just about standing my ground on principle. It was about potentially being the only family member willing to show Amanda that actions have consequences and that manipulation isn't a sustainable life strategy. Late in the afternoon, while organizing my thoughts, I came across an old photo album from my college graduation. There was a picture of all four of us: Mom, Dad, Amanda, then 13, and me, smiling genuinely at the camera. I remembered that day clearly. Despite our differences, there had been real pride and love in my parents' eyes as I accepted my diploma, the first step toward my independent life. What had changed since then? When had money and control become more important than supporting each other's authentic growth? The photo brought tears to my eyes, but it also strengthened my resolve. If I truly loved my family, the best thing I could do was stand firm against patterns that were ultimately harmful to everyone involved, especially Amanda. By evening, my investigation complete and my conviction solid, I prepared to respond to my family's ultimatum. But first, I would try one more time to reach Amanda directly, hoping she might be receptive to a different perspective than the one our parents had been reinforcing. As evening approached, I crafted a careful text to Amanda. "I've thought about your request. Can we talk about it? Call me when you have a few minutes." I kept it open-ended, hoping to start a dialogue rather than continue the standoff. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "So, you decided to pay?" she asked immediately, skipping any greeting. "I wanted to talk about it first," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. $3,000 is a lot of money for prom. I heard you're planning an after-party at the Lakeshore Hotel." There was a pause. "Who told you that? That's not important. What is important is that you weren't honest about what the money was for." "It's none of your business what I do after prom," she said defensively. "Are you sending the money or not?" "Amanda," I said carefully, "I care about you. That's why I'm concerned about this plan. Alcohol at a hotel party with minors isn't just dangerous, it's illegal." "Oh my God," she groaned. "You sound like such an old person right now. Everyone does this for prom. It's normal. Just because others do it doesn't make it a good idea," I countered. "Besides, $3,000 is excessive regardless of what it's for. When I was your age—" "Here we go," she interrupted. "When you were my age, you walked uphill both ways in the snow, right? Times are different now, Cliff. Nobody cares about your ancient prom experience." I bit back my frustration. "Amanda, listen. I want you to have a great prom, but I believe you'd value it more if you earned at least part of the money yourself. What about a compromise? You earn half, and I'll match whatever you make." "I don't have time for that," she exclaimed. "Prom is 3 weeks away, and why should I have to work when Mom and Dad are willing to give me the money?" "Because learning to earn things for yourself is an important life skill," I explained. "Money represents time and effort. Understanding that relationship is valuable. Save the life lessons," she snapped. "If you don't send the money, Mom and Dad will just cut you off. Is that what you want? To not be part of the family anymore just because you're being stubborn about $3,000? Her threat revealed how she viewed the situation, as a simple transaction where family membership could be revoked over financial non-compliance. It was disturbing to hear my 18-year-old sister weaponize family relationships this way. "Amanda," I asked gently, "do you really think family should work that way? That people can be cut off if they don't pay what others demand?" "That's how it's always worked in our family," she replied matter-of-factly. "Dad does it at work all the time. If people don't do what he wants, he fires them. Family's the same way. Her candid response stunned me. This was the worldview she had developed under our parents' guidance relationships as transactional arrangements, where money and compliance determined value. That's not how healthy families work, I told her. Real family supports each other's growth, not just their wants. Whatever, she said dismissively. Are you sending the money or not? Because if you're not, I need to know so I can tell Mom and Dad. It was clear this conversation wasn't going to break through her entrenched perspective. I'll be in touch with Mom and Dad directly, I said. Take care, Amanda. After hanging up, I composed a careful email to my parents with the subject line, regarding Amanda's prom expenses. In it, I detailed what I had learned about the hotel suite and alcohol plans, included screenshots of conversations with relatives confirming Amanda's pattern of financial manipulation, and expressed my concern about the values being instilled in her. I concluded, I cannot in good conscience fund activities that are potentially harmful, definitely illegal, and reinforce patterns of entitlement. I'm happy to discuss constructive alternatives that would allow Amanda to have a wonderful prom experience while learning valuable life lessons. I hit send, expecting it might take them some time to digest the information and respond thoughtfully. Instead, their reply came just 15 minutes later. Clifford, regardless of what Amanda plans to do with the money, the issue here is your unwillingness to support family. She's just being a teenager. We all did similar things at her age. Your judgmental attitude is the real problem. Our expectation remains unchanged. Transfer the funds by 8 p.m. today, or consider yourself separated from this family. Their dismissive response to documented evidence of concerning behavior was perhaps the most disturbing development yet. They weren't just enabling Amanda. They were actively defending behavior that could lead to serious consequences. At 6:30 p.m. my phone rang. It was my father. I thought I made myself clear in the email, he began without preamble, his voice taking on the same tone he used when negotiating difficult business deals. This isn't a debate. Dad, did you even read what I sent? I asked. Amanda is planning an illegal party with alcohol. Multiple relatives have confirmed she's been manipulating them for money. This is a serious issue that, you have until 8 p.m., he interrupted coldly. Pay, or you're cut off completely. That means no more family gatherings, no inheritance, no trust fund, nothing. Is that really the hill you want to die on? Before I could respond, my mother's voice came on the line. Clifford, after all we've done for you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. We've always supported you, even when you insisted on taking that job in Boston instead of coming into the family business. How can you be so cruel to your sister over such a small amount of money? Their inability to see past the immediate transaction to the larger principles at stake made something click into place for me. Money wasn't just something my family had, it was something they used as a tool for control. And for years, I had been the only one attempting to operate outside that system. I need to go, I said quietly. I'll be in touch before 8. As I hung up, a strange calm washed over me. The decision that had seemed so agonizing the night before now felt clear and necessary. This wasn't just about $3,000 for prom. It was about breaking a dysfunctional pattern that had defined our family for generations. I sat at my computer and began preparing several emails I had been considering throughout the day. As I worked, a phrase kept repeating in my mind. I need to cancel more than just Amanda's prom plans. At 7:45 p.m., 15 minutes before my father's deadline, I took a deep breath and pressed send on the first of several emails. Cancel, cancel, cancel everything, I whispered to myself as message after message departed into the digital ether, each one severing a different strand of the financial web that had both privileged and constrained me for my entire life. The first email went to Jeffrey Goldman, the family's longtime lawyer who managed the various trusts and legal entities that structured the Anderson family wealth. The subject line was simple: formal request to withdraw from family trust. Dear Jeffrey, I wrote, after careful consideration, I am formally requesting complete removal from the Anderson family trust and any other family financial entities in which I am currently included. I understand this will eliminate any current or future claims to family assets or inheritance. Please prepare the necessary documents for my signature at your earliest convenience. This decision is final and made with full awareness of its implications. The second email went to the family accountant, instructing him to remove me as an authorized user on all family credit accounts. Though I hadn't used these accounts in years, I was still technically listed on several high-limit credit cards and investment accounts that my parents had established for emergencies. The third email was to the family business email administrator, requesting removal from all company mailing lists, shared drives, and communication platforms. Though I had never worked for Anderson Furniture directly, I had always been included in family business communications to keep me in the loop. The fourth email was the most difficult. Addressed to my extended family aunts, uncles, cousins, it explained my decision to establish financial independence from my immediate family and the reasons behind it. I was careful not to villainize my parents or Amanda, instead focusing on our fundamentally different values regarding money and responsibility. I ended by assuring them that my decision to separate financially did not reflect any desire to lose my relationships with them. Finally, I drafted a text message to my parents. I have initiated complete financial separation from the family. My lawyer will be in contact regarding the formal trust withdrawal. I'm choosing self-respect over manipulation. I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. I love you all. At 7:59 p.m., 1 minute before my father's deadline, I pressed send on the text message, then activated an automatic email response to my parents' addresses. I am taking time to reassess our family relationship. I will not be available via email for the foreseeable future. The final step was perhaps the most symbolic. I blocked my parents' phone numbers not permanently, but as a boundary-setting measure, to give myself space from the emotional turmoil that would likely follow. As I completed these actions, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. There was deep sadness at the fracturing of family bonds, anxiety about the uncertain future of these relationships, but also an unexpected sense of liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I had completely severed the golden threads that had both supported and entangled me. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and stood by my apartment window, looking out at the Boston skyline. Had I gone too far? Was the nuclear option of complete financial separation an overreaction to what had started as a simple request for prom money? No, I decided. This wasn't an impulsive reaction, but the culmination of years of increasingly dysfunctional family dynamics. The prom money demand was merely the catalyst that had finally forced me to address the underlying issues. Around 9:30 p.m., my phone began lighting up with messages from extended family. My cousin Jessica called first. "Cliff, I got your email," she said when I answered. "Are you okay? This sounds serious." "It is," I confirmed, "but I'm all right. It was a necessary step." "For what it's worth," she said carefully, "I think you're doing the right thing. The way Uncle Robert and Aunt Diana use money has always been problematic, and Amanda has been getting worse about asking everyone for cash. Her support was unexpected and touching. Thanks, Jess. That means a lot." Next came a call from my Uncle Patrick, my mother's brother and the family member who had always been most similar to me in his views on financial independence. "Quite a bold move, nephew," he said without preamble. "Can't say I'm entirely surprised, though." "No?" I asked. "Robert and Diana have been using money to control the family narrative for decades," he explained. "Someone was bound to break ranks eventually. I'm proud of you for having the courage to do it." These conversations continued late into the evening. While reactions were mixed, many family members expressed understanding and even respect for my decision, suggesting the dysfunctional patterns I'd identified were visible to others as well. By midnight, exhausted but resolute, I finally went to bed. I had no idea how my parents and sister had reacted to my decision, and for now, that uncertainty was preferable to another round of emotional manipulation. As I drifted off to sleep, I wondered what the morning would bring. Had I permanently damaged my family relationships, or created an opportunity for them to evolve into something healthier? Only time would tell. I woke at 7 the next morning, earlier than usual for a Saturday. The events of the previous day came rushing back immediately. I checked my phone with trepidation, half expecting an array of angry messages that had circumvented my blocks through other family members' phones or alternative email addresses. To my surprise, there was nothing from my immediate family. The silence was both a relief and strangely unsettling. After years of constant contact and the intense drama of the previous day, the quiet felt almost unnatural. I made coffee and tried to go about a normal Saturday morning routine, though my thoughts kept returning to my family. What were they doing? Were they angry, sad, or perhaps even relieved? Had they simply written me off as requested, or were they planning some new approach to regain control? By 8:30 a.m., I was restlessly pacing my apartment, simultaneously dreading and hoping for some kind of contact that would indicate where things stood. Then, at exactly 8:30, my phone buzzed with a text message. The text was from Amanda. Despite everything, seeing her name on my screen sent a wave of relief through me. Whatever happened with our parents, I didn't want to lose my relationship with my little sister entirely. Cliff, I messed up. Really bad. Can we talk? Her message was surprisingly humble, lacking the entitled tone that had characterized our recent interactions. I hesitated only briefly before responding, yes, of course. Within seconds, my phone rang. I answered to hear Amanda's voice, sounding smaller and more vulnerable than I'd heard in years. I'm so sorry, she began, her words slightly muffled as though she'd been crying. I lied about the hotel and everything. Dad found out when Mr. Peterson called him. Mr. Peterson? I asked, trying to place the name. Tyler Peterson's dad, she explained. Tyler's the one who was getting us the alcohol. His dad saw the Venmo transfers and texts on Tyler's phone and called Dad last night to warn him what we were planning. I sat down on my couch, processing this development. How did Dad react? He and Mom completely lost it, Amanda said, her voice cracking. They took my phone, my laptop, my car keys. I'm grounded until graduation, maybe longer. Prom is completely canceled for me. But that's not why I'm calling. Why are you calling? I asked gently. Because you were right, she admitted. About everything. The money, the manipulation, all of it. And I want you to know that what Mom and Dad said about cutting you off from the family, that wasn't my idea. I never wanted that. Her sincerity was palpable and unexpectedly touching. I know, Amanda. I never blamed you for that part. There's something else, she continued. Dad wants to talk to you. He's different since last night. After Mr. Hoding, Peterson called. They went through my phone and saw all the texts where I was asking different relatives for money. It was like they finally saw what was happening. This was an unexpected turn. Is he there now? Does he want to talk? Yeah, she said. But he said it's your call. He'll wait until you're ready. I took a deep breath. Put him on. There was rustling as the phone changed hands. Then my father's voice came through, sounding uncharacteristically subdued. Clifford, he began formally, then softened. Cliff, I owe you an apology, a significant one. I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. You were right about Amanda's plans, and about the pattern of behavior we've been enabling. Mr. Peterson called me last night about the alcohol situation, and we subsequently discovered the extent of Amanda's financial activities with various family members. I see, I said neutrally. I want you to know that we've taken steps to address it. Amanda is facing appropriate consequences, including missing prom entirely. More importantly, we're reassessing how we've approached parenting and money. His words seemed genuine, but after years of manipulation, I remained cautious. That's good to hear, Dad. I hope it leads to positive changes. About the ultimatum, he continued, his voice growing uncomfortable. That was completely out of line. Family isn't conditional, and it certainly isn't determined by financial compliance. I was wrong to suggest otherwise. Coming from my father, who rarely admitted to being wrong about anything, this was significant. I appreciate that, I said carefully. Your mother would like to speak with you too. When you're ready, she's taking this hard. Finding out about Amanda's behavior has been a wake-up call for both of us. I'll call her later today, I promised. After ending the call with my father, I sat in silence for several minutes, trying to process this unexpected turn of events. The confrontation I had feared had somehow transformed into the beginning of a potential reconciliation. Later that morning, my mother called. Unlike my father's measured approach, she was openly emotional. "Clifford," she said through tears, "I can't believe how blind we've been. Not just about Amanda's behavior, but about how we've been using money in the family. Your email to the extended family. Several of them called us last night and this morning. They've apparently had concerns for some time about how we've been raising Amanda." "I'm sorry it came to this, Mom," I said sincerely. "Don't apologize," she insisted. "You tried to tell us, and we wouldn't listen. It shouldn't have taken Tyler's father calling about an illegal hotel party to make us see what was happening." Our conversation continued for nearly an hour, covering years of misunderstandings and different perspectives on money, success, and family. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like my mother was truly listening to my views rather than dismissing them as misguided or immature. By the end of our talk, we had agreed to a family video call the following weekend, with some ground rules I insisted upon. No ultimatums, no financial manipulation, and a commitment to honest communication even when uncomfortable. The family call that Sunday was awkward but productive. Amanda, chastened by her parents' discovery of her manipulative behavior, spoke little but listened attentively. My father, still uncomfortable with emotional conversations, nevertheless made an effort to engage without retreating to his usual authoritarian stance. My mother facilitated most of the discussion, showing a surprising willingness to acknowledge the problematic patterns that had developed in our family. We agreed to several concrete changes moving forward. First, Amanda would get a part-time job for the summer before college, with the understanding that she would be responsible for her personal expenses during her freshman year. My parents would pay for tuition and housing, but everyday costs would be hers to manage. Second, family financial discussions would be transparent rather than manipulative, with no more threats of being cut off for non-compliance with expectations. Third, and perhaps most importantly, we would work on rebuilding trust through actions rather than words or money. This meant regular communication without hidden agendas, respect for different perspectives, and a commitment to supporting each other's growth rather than controlling each other's choices. 6 months later, these changes had begun to take root in meaningful ways. Amanda, now in her first semester at Northwestern University, had maintained her summer job part-time during the academic year. She called me regularly for advice on budgeting and managing her expenses, showing a new appreciation for financial responsibility. My parents, while still occasionally slipping into old patterns, had made genuine efforts to transform their approach to family relationships. My father had even begun involving me in some family business decisions as a consultant rather than an obligation, respecting my choice to maintain my separate career while valuing my input. My mother and I had developed a more authentic relationship, speaking weekly about substantive topics rather than superficial family news or veiled criticisms of my lifestyle choices. She had even visited me in Boston, staying in my modest apartment without a single comment about upgrading to a luxury condo. As for my relationship with the extended family, it had actually improved. Many relatives expressed respect for my standing up to the unhealthy dynamics that had affected them as well, and our interactions became more genuine without the underlying currents of financial obligation. The trust withdrawal I had initiated on that dramatic night was never completed. After several weeks of reflection and observing the changes in my family, I contacted Jeffrey Goldman and put the process on hold. Not because I needed the safety net of family money, but because the gesture was no longer necessary as a boundary-setting measure. My family was learning to respect my boundaries without such drastic enforcement. Looking back now, I realized that what seemed like a crisis over $3,000 for prom had actually been an opportunity for necessary growth. By refusing to participate in the dysfunctional patterns that had defined our family for generations, I had inadvertently created space for something healthier to emerge. The experience taught me that true family strength comes not from wealth or control, but from respect for each member's individual journey and a willingness to support authentic growth, even when that process is uncomfortable or challenging. Had I simply sent Amanda the money that day, nothing would have changed. the patterns would have continued, Amanda would have moved further down a troubling path, and our family relationships would have remained superficial and transactional. Instead, by taking a stand for principles rather than peace at any cost, I helped catalyze changes that ultimately benefited everyone involved. Amanda gained valuable life skills and perspective. My parents began to recognize the limitations of their approach to parenting and family, and I established healthier boundaries while maintaining meaningful connections. In the end, character proved more valuable than wealth, and principles more important than temporary harmony. These are lessons worth far more than $3,000 for prom lessons that will serve all of us for a lifetime. I hope this story might help some of you who are facing similar challenges with entitled family members or unhealthy dynamics. Have you ever had to take a stand against manipulative behavior from loved ones? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complex family situations. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stand firm when it matters most.